Hey everyone, welcome to this episode of Unlimited, where we really tap in and sit down with people that are tapping into an unlimited consciousness where there's really no, if we confine our mind into a box, these people don't even have a box. We have a very, very special guest tonight, Altair. He'll be joining us from Japan. He is on another call at the moment, so he's going to be joining us in 10 minutes or so. He needed a breather before his other interview. And he is extraordinary human, and he's been this way since he was born. He at 2 years old, he started having a reoccurring dream every single day for a whole year, that he was dying in a monastery. And they actually took him to a monastery and figured out what was going on. And he lived a very, very fortunate spiritual life where he had teachers throughout his life. And he's really contributing at a global scale. A lot of it is in Europe. He's working with the wisdom path. He's working with the consciousness accelerator. He's working with the heart mind alchemy. He's working with raise your vibration. All these different projects, humanities team, which is what he's doing right now tonight earlier. And then he's going to be supporting LightNet to create a contact experience for 100 people. As many of you know, we're trying to put some sort of formulaic idea around contact, proof that we can do it, a repeatable structure that we can invite the whole world into. And we did it with 100 people in small groups of 8 in a very loving environment with lots of different methods and different guides. And we got 96% of people making contact. We thought, wow, that's pretty cool. And he said, well, what if we do it all at once around the globe? Kind of like a mini-harmonic convergence. And I said, wow, that sounds amazing. So he had a contact experience when he and a friend decided to call in a ship. And I think it was 6 minutes later, craft showed up on the beaches of Australia. And he and his friend were like, wow. And all the people on the beach saw it as well. And it was all over the papers next day. There was like US, like aviation departments putting flyers everywhere. I mean, it was a huge deal. In 2 weeks or several weeks after that, he was talking to someone just marveling at the fact that it happened. And they said, oh, well, I don't believe that happened. And he said, well, what would make you believe that happened? And they were like, well, why don't you just call some dolphins to the shore? And he's like, you want me to call dolphins to the shore? And they said, yeah. And he did. They came to the shore and he said, do you want to swim with them? And they were like, no. And he goes, okay, I will. And he went in and swam with them for half an hour. So this is the kind of unlimited consciousness and tapped in he is to this resonance, this grace, this like sacredness of the universe. And his brain is studied all over the world because it's in permanent Schumann resonance. And it also spikes a lot into gamma. And he said it's also in states that are completely immeasurable. So tonight we're going to ask him some questions. I want to share my screen and tell you a little bit more about what's going on while we're waiting. Okay, great. So he's here. Oh, Stephen, are you here? I think he is. Oh, he just arrived. So hold on, let me just show a few things while we're getting you on quickly here. Whoops. So we talked about you doing the contact experience. And if just so you guys know, we're opening kind of a pre-registration to people in our community at lightnet.org/contact100. And this will give you notification on Saturday to register at February 11th at 11:11. You'll be able to go in and register. I also want to tell you we've got some great interviews talking about what I was just telling you about. So we're not going to go over those ideas again tonight because we're going to use our time wisely with Altair. But you can, and I'll drop it into the chat. There are these incredible videos where he talks about a lot of his experiences in his childhood. And then I just want to let you know, we're going to be going to Conscious Life Expo tomorrow morning, and we're going to be in booth M74 if anybody's listening from LA or heading out there. I'm going to be giving a talk on Saturday at 3:00, and we're having a spoon bending party at 8:15 on Sunday. And as you guys know, we launched our Galactic Academy. It's on our new platform, as will be the beta group of 100 that'll be with Altair. And I want to remind you, we have Saturdays 8 a.m. We have Captain Adham doing neuro-linguistic programming, really teaching you how to change your life through timeline therapy and really the way you think. And it's free for members. We also have a community connection call, which is on Saturdays, the third Saturday. This is open to anybody, non-members, anyone. And that'll be the third Saturday of the month. And after that, we're going to have Susan Shaster, who she was in our contact labs and is so amazing. And she likes to solve problems that no one else can. So if you've been to doctors and can't figure out what's wrong, or you've been to healers and they haven't been able to solve your problem, well, Susan can do it. And she's going to do it live. We're adding another unlimited show every month. And she's going to be there on February 18th at 9 a.m. right after our community call. And then she's going to do a more intimate time with our members. And I just want to say we're doing online spoon bending now. We stopped time last time 6 times. So it's been really fun. And let me see, I'm going to pull up Altair now. Let me see if I can find you. Let's see. Okay.
You found me yet?
Oh, wait, there you are. There you are.
Go.
Okay, great. Hey, Stephen. Oh my gosh, thanks for being on time. And I didn't see you until just now. And so yeah, welcome.
Oh, what an incredible blessing to be here with all of you. So I've just come from a Guidance with Humanity's team where I was guiding opening to healing. So some of you were on that and have switched over. So Zenka, what an incredible opportunity we've got here collectively to make contact, not just with our extraterrestrial families, but equally with all other aspects of energy and consciousness that might come up over the course of this time. So having done this for many years, well over 30 years, I'm aware how incredible the power is that you all have within you. So I'm certainly looking forward to lots of questions, and I'll give you a really funny example just because it's so beautiful. Just a couple of short, quick stories that will touch your sense of humor. One's from my 8-year-old daughter. So she, my wife often says things to her like, what are you drawing today? And my daughter will say, a mermaid. And my wife says, oh, okay. And you know that mermaids aren't real. Now, say that to an 8-year-old with the mind of my daughter. She gives my wife this stern look and says, Mama, have you ever seen mermaids on the far side of Pluto, the dark side? That's straight from the... My wife says, oh, no, because I can't see. Yeah, exactly, Mama. You can't see there. So you can't say absolutely that there are no mermaids on the far side, dark side. So just speaking to, first of all, an 8-year-old's wisdom is that all of us perceive right now, right this minute, the world as you're looking in different ways. What I see, hear, feel, and sense is in many cases the same, but potentially has some differences. And so your perception is really crucial. So the first thing I want you to ask yourself as you're listening here is, what's your basic perception? How do you connect with that perceiving? Is it more seeing? Is it more feeling? Is it more hearing? And as we're sharing, remember, we're all doing this right now. So something already is happening. We're actually starting to tune in inside and become aware that we have many senses that right now we're starting to open, even just by having this conversation and looking closely at it. For example, when we think about, stars and planets and galaxies and so on, and we say, well, that's the universe, and we point up to the sky. But actually what we see is less than 4% of what actually exists, right? The other 96% of stuff currently We don't know whether it's dark energy, dark matter. We can't see it, discern it, or comprehend it, or measure it. So there are lots of examples like this. We talk about senses in terms of seeing, feeling, hearing, and so on. But there are senses like magnetoreception, where they've done research in the University of Southern California around about 2019, where they discovered that humans actually have like an internal compass due to the iron content in their cells, that actually, much like a compass, can direct you. Certain people have a better sense of direction than others. So that's a different sense. And there were scientists, even as far back as the early 70s, that identified over 40 different senses that we have. Whereas we, just because of the way we speak, we tend to sense into just a few. So we start to really open to the fact that you are absolutely limitless, all of you. And that you have, when you know where to look and how to explore it, that you have this limitless potential. And it is so exciting. You know, we tend to perceive everything in a certain way. For example, all of you right now, if I said, hey, are you stable and still, you'd say, yeah, I think and feel like I'm standing still on the earth. But we know that the Earth is moving about the nearly circular orbit, and it covers the route at about 30 kilometers a second, right? And the Milky Way itself is also moving at an astounding 1.3 million miles per hour. Now, consider that. So we are not standing still at all. We are actually moving at this tremendous rate, but due to gravity and the way that our senses work, we perceive it as, oh, we're sitting still. So consider that. Consider that the way that you perceive things is only just a fraction of the reality that actually is. And that is exciting, right? Because then you start to connect into the fact that all the things that you've ever believed were possible are possible, and that they can be measured, or in some cases, the measuring instruments do not exist. So I was like the Tibetan monks that I studied with for, nigh on 40 years. And that was when they first brought out headsets in HRV, I put them on my belly. And they said, why are you doing that? I said, well, there's not just brain measurement. There's also heart measurement. There's not just heart measurement. There's also gut measurement. As many of you know, if you've done many years of martial arts, I did around about 20 years of Kung Fu and many different styles of arts with monks and with masters. I used to do a Tai Chi sword practice where we were blindfolded and we used real swords. I can tell you, that can be a bit scary in the beginning. It's pretty exciting, but it's also speaks to the power of your senses. And so if you're aware of that kind of work, you'll know that the chi center is very important. So the lower energy centers in our body, once they're awoken, awake due to Shakti and Kundalini forces that allow you to do really, really extraordinary things. So one of the wonderful beings that I have studied with for many years is His Holiness the Dalai Lama. And I was fortunate enough when I was part of a group that sponsored him, nearly 40 years ago on his first trip to New Zealand. And as a result of that, I was lucky enough to be able to spend private time with him. And I asked him for guidance, and he said 4 things. He said, study, embody, become, and then teach. Now, I'm passing on that same direction to all of you. Our whole planet needs you to connect and help everybody to recognize that when our planet gets into a state of coherence, in other words, when we're all in peace and love and wisdom, that the whole connection with our extraordinary cosmos will open up for humanity. It's the same kind of process. If you think about the early years of colonization and so on, they were all done with violence, with all kinds of other challenges, just simply because people were in fear. And it still exists today, right? We haven't eradicated fear from our planet. So right now, our world, just like the Dalai Lama says, needs masters and mastery. And so one of the things that, with Zenka's beautiful guidance and care that I'm going to be guiding you into is this power of your own being. So together, we are actually going to learn in these programs how to connect to the light body, how to understand the science of consciousness, how to use consciousness and purify it to open these channels in the body, that the subtle energy body that are known as the Sushumna, or the central channel, and the side channels, the Ida and Pingala. Many of you will have experiences where you'll open to telepathy, clairescence, clairaudience, telekinesis, any of those Siddhis, but naturally, simply because you're open to that possibility. So we'll do sacred ritual and ceremony. We're going to look at many different types of rituals over those weekends that allow you to access the Shakti of the spheres, or the celestial cosmos frequencies, that actually allow you to access exactly what we're speaking about, and that is to make contact. And in essence, you're making contact with your families, with your star nations. So I work with the Indigenous peoples of Australia and New Zealand. So I'm Maori Hawaiian by birth, and I work with the elders of the nation of Hawaii. So we've been building a university, and I also work with the Achuwa people, who are known as the Dream People, who have, of the Amazon, who have direct connections to the Pleiades. So they actually have a dream garden where the women gather to connect to the Pleiades. So many of the Indigenous peoples of our world have a natural connection, and they speak to their star nations that are very much part of their family, like they're part of my family, like they're part of your family. So I worked in Japan with Masaru Emoto, the water molecule man, and he introduced me to the Hopi indigenous elders, and the beauties of the rituals and ceremonies of their people. And I can just only say that I'm in absolute awe of the extraordinary wisdom of the indigenous elders of our planet. And they already know this. They take this. When I met with the Hopi elders, they accepted me as knowing what they knew. And there was this deep inner knowing of the star nations and peoples of this planet, that we're intimately connected. So just as we are now getting intimately connected here, each of you brings teams of wisdom, guardians, guides, mentors, elders, ancestors, celestial nations, star nations that you're already connected to. And that is going to help you to open all of us. So this is not so much, of course, I'm going to share with you, many aspects of that wisdom. I'm going to talk to you about the stars and the way that you can learn from the fixed stars of your astrology, for example, how to see energies and frequencies that exist. So I've trained for about 40 years in the Vedic and Tibetan systems of astrology, or really what's known as Jyotish, or the science of light, because it's not what you know in Western astrology typically is reading and predicting. It's more looking at frequencies that exist. So there'll be particular fixed stars or particular ways of reading the energies of your birth chart that actually speak straight to your connection with your star nations, with the extraterrestrial families that you're actually already naturally part of. So the second story I was going to give you was, I was talking to a dear friend of mine yesterday. I sent this to Zenka, and it did make me chuckle. And we were just on a call, and she said, as she does so beautifully, "Oh, I really want a sign from the Pleiades." And I said, "Really? What sort of sign would be good?" Oh, she said, "Just something physical." And I said, "Oh, really? Okay. How would you like that to turn up?" And she said, "Well, it would be almost great if something would just turn up in the middle of my room or your room." I said, okay. Well, we'll see what happens. And I said, "What would you, how would that, does it need to be a thing? Does it need to be a person? No, she said, just a thing. That would do it. So anyway, I was doing a particular guidance with her, and I'll show you the actual result because it's just so beautiful, and it really speaks to all of you here about the power of what's possible when we bring our attention to this. So again and again, especially when we're doing the 2 weekend workshops together and the week in between and the week after, I'm going to be guiding you to bring your total attention and awareness, not only to the infinite power of your being, but to the infinite power of your connections with the celestial cosmic highways themselves. So that's what I advised her to do. Let's tune in. So I did that. And this was just yesterday. And I said, I need a cue from you, just a key word that both of us will know that that's what you're expecting. You're expecting the Pleiades to show up at that moment. Sure, she said, why don't look, one of my favorite characters in Lord of the Rings is Galadriel. Now, I particularly love Galadriel because Galadriel means she who bears the radiance of the light, right? And there were, in fact, if you're a Tolkien fan, you might know that the Pleiades in the Lord of the Rings is actually known as Reminath. And that particular star system is known as the awakening of the elves, the awakening of the elven kingdom. So there's a lot of connections between the Pleiades and what. So I said, great, that is just perfect. So anyway, I'm doing the guidance, and she's still got the audio of this. So I'd play it for you if I had it, but I'll show you something else from. So right on the word, you can imagine, right? I have my house busy all day, and there's lots of people, but here it's particularly silent for about 2 hours. And right when I say the word Galadriel, and here the reason why I'm saying this to you is, start to work with cues in your own inner heart. Like, what do you want? What do you really want as a sign from your contact, one? What do you want it to, how's it going to work for you? Because your perception is different than mine. I might ask for one thing, you might ask for another. So she asked for the sign right whenever I said the word Galadriel. Now, I didn't know what was going to happen. The key here is that you want to actually rest your conceptual mind and be totally open to the boundless. So I just thought, okay, well, right at a certain point, I'll say, G. And as I started to say, G, Galadriel, right in the middle of this guidance, the doorbell went ding dong, right on G. And so she still got this audio, and she told me this morning, she said, oh my goodness, it was right when you said G. Yeah, I said, I know. I said, look, that's just the way the cosmos works. So I was doing the guidance, and I said Galadriel, and then I said, so just rest. So she rested for a moment, and I went to the door and I opened the door, and there's a little boy. I'm in Japan. There's a little Japanese lad there. Now, my daughter's name is Maya, and he came up to the door. I've never seen him before. I usually don't have young Japanese boys knocking on my door because they're usually a bit too scared of that foreign guy that lives in Japan. And I opened the door, and he said, hello, Zen. Zen was his name. Zen. Hello, Zen. Maya. And he gave me, so he said, Zen Maya. Now, of course, Maya is the Pleiades, right? There's a sign already. And he gave at the door this, so I'll just share you. You can you see that? Yep. Can you see this? Now, this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, right? It is a star shape with 7. I didn't know why he was giving me a 7-pointed star shape. As those of you that are, aware of the power of the Pleiades, you will know that the 7 stars of, there are 7 stars in Pleiades. And I sort of looked at this with astonishment, and I said to him, oh, Maya. So Maya's my daughter. Maya, Tagyeta, Electra, Pleione, Atlas, Alcyone, and Merope. Those are the 7, right? And those were the 7 vertexes of that star. And I thought, what are the chances of somebody right on the the G of Galadriel coming to a door and giving you a star with 7 points when somebody else is asking for the sign from the Pleiades. Now, you can imagine it gave both me and this wonderful friend of mine a lovely shiver, because I absolutely love the way that our star brethren actually will reach out to us and tap us on the shoulder and say, don't. So she was like, I said, is that good enough? I said, okay. So we were still in some awe of not only the timing, but, you know, Maya with a 7-pointed star was even amusing to my family. They said, what did he give? Why did he give? I said, I don't know. Just appear. We asked for a sign to appear, and we asked for it right on. So anyway, there's the beauty, right, of suspending judgment, allowing yourself to be completely open to the universe, which is what we're all doing now, knowing that you're in a collective. So I used to do these practices with over double weekends like this. So that's why I'm actually doing the practice like this. I did it with a very famous ufologist at the time. His name, we'll call him Steve, because that was his name. He was a famous sports star in Australia. And he went home one day to his retreat place while he was a famous sports star. And according to him, was in a sleeping posture, basically for 3 days, without food or water, unable to move, and receiving downloads from the extraterrestrial library and from the star nations. And he was the person I studied with for years, and that we used to do tours, and especially at that time in different parts of New Zealand. And that story I've told many times about us calling a starcraft, but that was not the only one we called. We did this with a lot of people, a lot of witnesses. There are a lot of people over those years that saw orbs. So those of you, for example, that are seeing orbs or are seeing lights in the sky or are starting to connect with that consciousness, and we are going to together be going out at different times of the day and night to do that. A friend of mine rang up. She said, "Oh my goodness, I want to do this so much with you, but it's so late." And then I said, "You do know what it's about, right?" Well, I kind of looked at it, she said, and I said, "It's actually about, connecting right at midnight." And she said, "Oh my goodness." Oh, she said, "I don't think I ever stay up that late." I said, "Well, this could be one of those times when you really do." So it's like, so of course, what I'm going to be doing is I have a temple here. So I'm obviously live in Japan. Just down the road, there is a temple with an actual portal on it. I've had a very famous psychic friend of mine come, and she walked like I did. I said, "Tell me what you feel right here." So she walked out onto the island, which is in the middle of the lake. And she said, "Oh my God, there's a portal here. There's like a transformative, transporting portal." I said, "Exactly." I said, "I've been saying this to people for years." And I said, "I've had many, many past life memories here." So a friend of mine came out with me to this portal on the island. There's just a couple of lovely stories around it. And she was playing her harp, and she's playing her harp. And I said, wait, stop playing that harp. Do you want to see the actual elements play your harp? She said, "That's not possible." I said, no, they'll play it, just like in The Alchemist. I said, it actually works when you actually really know that knowing, when you trust the elements. And I said, "You're obviously a wind person. Let's watch." I said, "Put your harp down." And I said, "Just come back." And I said, "What you got to do is rest." She said, "It's not going to happen." I said, just suspend all judgment and watch." So we're on the island. She's put the harp in the middle, right on this portal place. And suddenly the wind, right at that, the wind comes up, a bit like the Galadriel sign. The wind comes up and it sweeps down the harp and it plays it like a beautiful melody. And she's like, she said, "Oh, it's just a coincidence." I said, "Yeah, okay. What say you have 2 coincidences? How many do you need?" She said, "Well, if it played it again," she said, I might be willing to." Okay. I said, "Watch." So anyway, I said, the key is we've got to actually combine our energies together and just rest any judgment. She said, "Okay, I can do that." So I just guided her into it. Next moment, the wind plays the harp. She picks up her harp and she said, Oh, I don't know if I believe in it. I said, you don't have to believe it. It's elemental. It's not me. It's not you. We went down to the subway, and we're in the subway. And she said, I still don't know whether to believe that. I said, look, why don't you just suspend judgment here? What about if the wind came and played your heart? I said, there's no wind. This is a subway. And she said, okay, I'll do that. We stopped, right? We stopped. It was just so amazing. It was just because we were in those, just in one of those magical moments where it just had to happen, a bit like my dolphin experiences and all the other things. So the next moment, of course, you can imagine, right? The wind comes down, sweeps down the subway, blow just everything that you could possibly imagine, almost to give it a little bit of extra oomph. It sort of swept her and her clothes, and she goes, and she just got this look of absolute horror on her face. It's just like the very thing that she perhaps didn't want to believe in. It happened 3 times. And she sort of went, she said, I'm not coming back. I'm not coming back. I'm not going to play. So that's true. She didn't actually come back. I think she got a bit spooked by the fact that even in a, deserted subway, that this wind would find her. She said, it's not going to follow me, is it? No, I said, no, it's all right. So, many examples like that. You will be open to the miracle of yourselves, however that arises, and your own infinite connection with celestial beings, guardians, guides. All the most extraordinary things will happen because it's you, because it's your wisdom. It's not me. So we're going to work together. We're going to work together on the crystalline body. We're going to work with healing and opening the energy centers, realigning your pineal gland, working with crystal receiving and transmitting centers, both here and in the cosmos. So I'll teach you about that. We're going to clear the Sushumna, clear the Ida and Pingala. We're going to learn some really basic inner fire practices and really basic, similar to Kriya and inner fire, but not exactly the same. What I call the inner fire star practice. So it's really useful. And I'm going to, today, before we finish, I'm going to set you up with a really simple, what I would call the Pearl of Wisdom practice. I was fortunate some years ago, a woman met me on the street and just said, you're a monk and Sai Baba wants to see you. And I said, okay. And so I went back to her place later that evening with some friends, and there were 2 statues there, one of Ganesha and one of Kuan Yin. And she said, I know you're a monk. And Sai Baba told me if you pray in front of these, some magic will happen. I said, oh, well, okay. Yep, good. So I stood in front of Ganesha, and out of its trunk came this Amrita. I could pick up the statue. It was quite big, but big enough I could bodily pick it up. No known source, just this Amrita. Now, this was not the first connection I'd had with Sai Baba, but when I was a kid, we lived next door to some Sai Baba devotees, and they always had vibhuti and ash and gold things coming out of their house and all kinds of unusual places. So the Ganesha was not, but to taste this Amrita was just like heaven itself. And then beside it was a statue of Kuan Yin. So those of you not familiar with Kuan Yin, she's the goddess of compassion. So she said, Sai Baba told me if you just pray in front of the statue, a miracle will happen. I said, okay, so I knelt down. And the only thing I could think of praying for was the liberation of all beings. So I really want to bring that to our hearts too, that everything we're going to do together is actually not for yourself. It's for humanity. It's for the star nations. It's for the indigenous peoples. It's for nature. It's for all your animal friends. It's for the whole entire planet to get in coherence and to actually live together as one, as we're destined to do. So when I did that, I just simply thought, okay, I'll pray for the liberation of all beings. Suddenly, out of the heart of this life-size bronze statue of Kuan Yin came a rare deep sea ocean pearl, about this size. It had a mother pearl at its base and a baby pearl at its front, but they were fused. And it came out on a pure strand of silk, actually birthed out of, I can tell you, to see a pearl birth out of the heart of a statue is truly amazing. It is, starships appearing in the sky are truly amazing. So is your heart. And that's what it really is about, right? In your heart, as we know, from the electromagnetic field of the heart, If any of you are heart math fans, you'll know a lot of research has been done to the heart. So we're going to really open your heart. And so that's what happened. This pearl came out of the heart of the statue into my hand. So I'm going to guide you in many practices over the courses of those weekends into your own wisdom nature, and how that arises for you. And so the Star Nations connection might arise in lots of different ways. I'm going to open you to the presence of your lucid dreaming practices, to the fact that you might actually bump into connections in the street. That happened to a friend of mine when years ago. He had a dream. I spoke to him. He said, I've been told I've got to go to India. And I said, are you going to go? He said, well, no, not unless it happens more than once. And so I said, but I've come over here to tell you I had the same dream, to tell you to go to India. He said, no, well, okay, only if it happens 3 times. I got in the car and I was chuckling away. I went to a automatic bank teller machine. And as I'm standing there, the woman in front of me, this will put shivers in your spine. The woman in front of me turns around, looks me straight in the eyes as if she's looking straight through me, and says, tell your friend to go to India. Like that, just straight out of the. So I was running a company at the time in New Zealand, and I said to the secretary is such a could organize anything around anything. I said, hey, I'm not going to be in right away. Just hang on. She said, what's up? I said, I've got to go and tell my friends. So I drove all the way back. I said, 3 times in one day. Please go to India. So this is what could happen to you. Once you start to open to the field, this infinite field of being that is actually, here, right now, here and present, for every one of you. When you look at like theoretical physics, for example, the past decade has spoken about unified field theories. So the theories identify a universal unified field at the basis of all form. You are that, right? You're not separate from that field. Ultimately, you are that field. And at the same time, there's been all this cutting edge research in the field of neuroscience. So I'm very embedded in the neuroscience research as well, because I work with a Japanese company, the Dentsu Science Labs, and they've published research on my brain, which is actually quite handy. When people say, oh, have you ever heard of Schumann resonance? And I show them a graph and give them all the data, and I say, well, my brain's in Schumann resonance 24/7. And they, of course, when they see the data, they think I'm just making a story, but they say, oh, it really is. Yeah. And I said, look, it looks like I'm on DMT all day long. And they laugh and they say, oh, that's a funny joke. No, I said, look, here's the data. And I show them the same incredibly high theta spike that happens during a DMT experience. They're permanently switched on in my brain all the time, because to everybody's different, right? My brain looks like I'm looking at rainbows, which is why I have this background, because my world actually looks like that. It looks like you all look like bodhisattvas and angels to me. So you're all glowing. I can see people's auras. Yeah, exactly. It's truly wonderful, right? When you start to feel in your pure being, you start to really connect with, wow, I actually literally have this potential, and I really am this infinite power. I really am that. You actually get it, and you start to relate to other people like that. You remind them that they're the infinite power too, and it only needs a small enough group of us, say 1,000 people going around to do that, to, like the Dalai Lama said, because I asked him, well, how do you teach it, Your Holiness? And he said, teach 10 to teach 10 to teach 10. So what I'm hoping through Contact 100 is that you're going to actually take these experiences, you're going to take the data and all the research that Zenka so beautifully puts together, and you're actually going to use it to teach others. It's not me, it's you, right? This is all about all of us doing this as a global population. We've got to kick this planet's people into action and actually say, wake up. We can all do this together, and we need enough of us to stand up, to stand beside your guardians and your teachers and your masters and say, there is mastery in every one of you. So that's what that neuroscience has actually discovered. There is, as well as us waking and dreaming and deep sleeping, there is also the unified field of consciousness that shows up in every one of our brains when we know the meditative state, the samadhi states, which I'm also going to show you how to access and how to wake up, and because you're all awake, right? It's just, I'm just reminding you of your own true nature. So working together in that way, I'm a very avid lucid dreamer. So all of you that want to experience lucid, I remember I did a lucid dreaming course some time ago for about, lovely group of about 50 people. And one of them on the course, who was a dear friend of mine, a lawyer, said, I've never lucid dreamed in my life. And I said, okay, just watch. The very first night he had a lucid dream. I'll never forget that joy, that childlike joy of like waking up in your dream, and you're there in your dream and able to transform it. So if you're listening and you think, oh my God, I want a lucid dream, here's a quick tip, right? Practice transforming as you go around in your day. Make it a 24/7 experience. So for example, when you're sitting there and you've got nothing to do and you're chatting to your friends and you have a moment of, actually transform them. See what happens if you transform your own shape into, for example, an animal totem. Like if I were to ask you right now, what's your animal? You can write it down in the chat. I really encourage people to write. Once you write, all the neurons in your brain start to fire and they start to go, hey, I can do that. I'm limitless, sure, I can. So write down, what is the animal totem that you'd shift into? And then see how often it shows up for you. Like when I was, partly because of the, Maori Hawaiian lineage, I was invited to lots of powwows in the States and by the Hopi elders and by different, beautiful indigenous people of America, by their leaders. And so I still remember I sat one day in the sweat lodge and we were having a wonderful time. One of the shaman there said, hey, have you ever, connected with your spirit animal? And I said, yeah, it's a hummingbird and I see them all the time. And so I know some of you are going to tap straight into hummingbirds because you're already that kind of totem as well. Some of you are dragons, some of you are horses, some of you, right? You've got all this. Plus, I'm going to show you in your charts how to identify some of these animal lineages through the stars. For example, if you've got anything at around about 27 degrees in Leo, that is actually right on the sign of what is known as Alphard, or in Hydra, it's the star system of the dragon. So if any of you have things right to it, and I'm going to show you how to read charts a little, and just how to have a little bit of fun, right? A lot of this is you suspend judgment, you go back to enjoying things just the way you did as a child, and you open to that childlike simplicity. So this is one of the wonders of connecting into the frequency of the stars. So I was in the sweat lodge and the shaman said, would you like to see? I said, sure. So he took me along to his teepee and we're sitting in there and there's this, he's got this beautiful set of runes and he says, choose one. And he said, what did you say you told me? I said, it's the hummingbird. Oh, right. He says, okay, so take that. He's a wonderful, wonderful being. So I reach it to take out. And of course, it's the hummingbird, right? Because it would be. So he says, oh, great. Well, let's find out what your secondary totem is. He puts it back and he says, I'll do it just so that, just in case you're too magnetic. So he pulls it out. Of course, the second one is a hummingbird. Oh, he said, look at that. You've got a strong totem. He says, let's do it a third time just to be sure. We'll find out what your secondary totem is. So we shake, rattle, and roll. And we just decide, I'll tip them all out into a bowl. And this time we'll try and make it, we'll both put our hands in, and then whoever finds one first, just say it's. So we do that. And of course, I got one, I pull it out. It's the hummingbird. And right at that moment, a hummingbird flies into the flap of his tent. Flies around us and flies out again. And he just looks at me, didn't say anything, just goes, with this knowing twinkle in his eye. And so we're going to be open to, all of these energies. And Zenka, I promise I'll keep quiet soon because otherwise I'll just keep, rattling on and we'll feel like we're on a steam coast, steam express with each other. And it'll be like, wow, what is happening here? There's so much beautiful energy in this party. So, because that's it, right? You want to keep that childlike beauty of that you're kind of adventuring into this with Zenka and myself and all of you with this childlike sense of wonder. Yes, thank you, Susan. Exactly that. That there is this absolute wonder that's present in the world, and you're that. And that's how the miracles happen. They genuinely happen like that. I've been a student of Saint Teresa of Lisieux for, as much as I was little. I think I think she was my first date at age 6. So if you've got masters or guardians or guides, put them in the chat. So, because we start to sort of recognize the family in each other. And what I discovered was, like you, that when you really know these family members gathered around you, that they're assisting you all the time. I remember I was in a retreat with Sotni Rinpoche some years ago, and he always said, do you realize that at this moment there are billions of bodhisattvas here assisting you? I said, yeah, I do. They're definitely here. I've had all those incredible. So yeah, type your guides, type your ascended masters, all of these family members. This is what I want you to really be present to. The Contact 100 is literally about contacting 100 of all your family members on all dimensions, on all levels, that literally you have access to the most incredible potential when you bring your awareness there. So this is what we used to do in these, weekends when we used to call StarCraft. What we'd do is we'd spend 2 weeks together. So what I'm going to try and do or untry, as Yoda said, there is no try. What I'm going to untry is literally to sit with you for 2 weeks, and we're going to bring our attention through, journals, through exercises, through all of this again and again and again, to the fact that, one, we're a family and we're doing this together. 2 is that family includes all celestial directions, beings, guardians, everything, that you're not separate from that. And they literally are there for you, and that your perception will open to that. And we will then start to go into the actual in the body experience of how to use ritual, how to use ceremony, how to use the star consciousness, how to raise Shakti, how to work with the star meditations, how to enhance your experience through things like aromas, oils, essential music, dance, mantra, yantra, all of that kind of thing. Symbol, any way that you use that access, we're going to use it. And how to work with your lucid dreams, your future self, how to dream the future, how to use that interdimensional remote viewing natural skill that you have to open portals to the multiverse and actually access them. You will drop into those spaces simply because you already are those spaces. It'll be different for everybody, just like your totems are different. You'll tap into that. We're basically tapping into thousands of years of star wisdom and actually accessing it, and you becoming that. You're not separate from it. You've already got that encoded in your DNA. There are lots of systems, whether you look at Kabbalistic systems or ancient Vedic systems or Tibetan medicine, or you look at the extraordinary powers of the indigenous people right across this planet. They knew those ancient codes. They knew how to actually access them. And that's what we're going to be doing. So we are actually going to do that and become one light family. That's what really LightNet is about. It's about experiencing something extraordinary because you are extraordinary, and experiencing it through the light network, which you already are. It's not out there, it's in you. It's in the matrix of both your physical body and your subtle energy body, and what we could call the wisdom body, or the light body, or the rainbow body. So there are extraordinary, I was in a guidance with a group one time, and one of my students from way back then manifested a rainbow light bulb, and it came out. We filmed it. I'll have to dig up this photo. Same when I've been working with Reiki masters, because I've trained many masters in about the 30 or 40 years I've been doing this, and the Reiki symbol appeared in the room on the wall, which I've got photos of. So these things, same with the StarCraft. When they came, they were reported all over New Zealand. It's been part of the official records. It's been what do you call a closed file for some time. We were there in the beach area, which was Sumner in Christchurch in the early 90s when this happened, and the US Air Force flew over 2 jets and a whole flotilla of scientists, and they hammered notices all over the town saying $500 for rewards and information leading to the sighting of the craft, because of course they know it's real. They know it's an actual event. It was so extraordinary. About 2 months ago, because this is the 90s, right? Early 90s. And 2 months ago, my friend in New Zealand rang, a wonderful friend of mine. She said, oh, you'll never guess what happened. She said, I was at this party, and she said everybody was talking about paranormal events and the incredible potential of us as human beings. And a person brought up about that event, in the early 90s, where there was a genuine sighting, which everybody knew. And then a whole lot of people poo-pooed it and said, oh, it's just, that's just it's a legend. I think somebody was just, and of course there were 40 witnesses, plus lots of other things happened. And then one of the people in the room stood up. And they were about a gathering of about 25 or 30 people. And my friend and he didn't know each other. And he stood up and he said, no, everything that Altair said in that, in all that, those news is 100% correct. Because he said, I was on that beach and I saw that amazing craft appear. He said it was exactly as it was transparent. There is no craft on Earth currently that is transparent, that has an invisibility cloaking device that reveals just the, so it was perfectly transparent. We could all see the stars through it. It moved at a speed of light. It moved from a standing start to an infinite speed at the drop of a penny. And he said, I was there. I saw the whole thing. So everything that he said, including all the scientists, all the research, everything is 100% accurate. So my friend rang. So this is only a few months ago. So it's still in people's, memory about the wonders of these, journeys that we can all be present to. So I'm just present to that. I'd also like you to write in the chat. I'm going to get Zenga to send me the chat afterwards. I'd love you to write in the chat where you think some of your star origins are. Are you an Arcturian? Are you a Pleiadian? Are you what? And this is just an affinity, right? It's a frequency. If you think of sound tuning or alchemy, then basically it's a frequency that does not matter what anybody else says. If somebody says, how can you have a connection with that? Of course you do, right? In the days before the world was explored 1,000 years ago, if somebody had said, well, look, it's just going to be so easy one day to access the Americas, and where are they anyway? Of course, people would have thought 1,000 years ago that that was nearly impossible. This is exactly what we're facing as a globe today. The very thing. Why are we spending billions of dollars on military? We should be spending billions of dollars on training people worldwide to trust and peace, to access the light body and know how to work with that. That would be a fabulous, opportunity. And instead, we're still blowing up people and destroying things. It is absolutely astonishing. So please put down your connections, because as soon as you state those, I encourage you to write things down, to state them out loud, because something happens when you affirm that. It's like you get a vibratory frequency in your body that says, I'm that. And it doesn't matter what anybody else says, you are that. And that frequency is what we're going to work with, because we're going to tune that in, and we're going to turn it up, and it's going to be turned up full volume. I will say, I'm going to ask Zenka about some of these. I'm going to get you to sign waiver forms, just saying that you take full responsibility, for example, for the amazing things that happen, because I'm well aware amazing things do happen. These techniques are very, very powerful. A friend of mine, he was a CEO of a major public health company, wonderful, wonderful friend. And he came to me and he said, I've got to come to you for those sessions. He said, all these people come and all these amazing things happen. I want to experience. I said, what do you want to experience? And he said, well, I want to experience clear audience. And I said, oh, okay, we can do that. He said, no, I mean real clear audience. Oh, I said, give me an example. What does that mean? And he said, well, I'd like to be able to hear he said, I live like 5 kilometers from the city center. I'd love to be able to hear the buses driving around. Really? I said, are you sure you know what you're asking for? Yeah. He said, something like that. That'd be great. So I showed him some of these techniques. And I said to him, I'm only going to teach you on one provision. This is one thing I would say. So when I teach you these, you've got to do exactly what I say. So don't try to do it 24 hours on your first day, because you'll literally blow your subtle energy body. So that's why I'm saying you've got to be very, very caring and kind to your body. And if you're dealing with physical issues, for example, we'll look at all that as well. So we'll look really kindly and caringly at the body. So of course you can imagine he was a being of brute force. He's a big man and powerful. And he loved going to the gym. And he suddenly realized that when he did these exercises, that he felt he not only could lift more weights than he'd ever been able to lift in his life, but he could do multiple ones, and he could run at high speed. He said, I'm feeling like I'm like 13 and I'm able to engage in the plan in a whole different way. I said, that's okay, but just don't do any more than what I've told you. 1 in the morning, it's like the Matrix, the blue or the red. Just 1 in the morning, 1 at lunchtime, 1 in the evening. Yeah, I know all that. You can imagine what happened, right? After about 2 weeks, he rings me and he's got this panic-stricken voice, and he said, Altair, he said, something terrible's happened. I said, what's that? He said, well, you know how you told me just to do 1 a day? Yeah, I said, that was what we were going to do for the first. He said, I couldn't resist. I'm like a naughty kid. He said, so yesterday, he said, I decided I'm just going to do, I don't care what Altair says. I got to do this the whole day and I'll see what happens. And he said, I got up to 3 hours of doing them nonstop. And he said, suddenly, the very thing that I'd want to do, clairaudience, suddenly happened. He said, it was incredible. I was sitting outside in the garden, and I could hear my kids playing inside in their room, and what they were saying as clear as a bell. And not only that, I could hear the buses driving around the square 5 kilometers, and I could hear all the mosquitoes in my garden, all of them. And he said, I couldn't switch it off. And I said, look, okay, just come. No, he said, I need it to stop. And yeah, I said, I'll show you how to stop, but now you've got to do exactly what I say. And I said, I'll be on call for you for 3 days because it's going to take you 3. He said, 3 days? I said, yeah, it'll take you 3 days. You got to do exactly what I say. Okay, first of all, take your shoes off. Yeah, so anyway, you can imagine I just simply guided him into grounding the experience, and it's fortunate. I've had a lot of those supersensory experience of telepathy and telekinesis, all of those kinds of energies arise for myself, and you learn to let them go. You learn to play with them, allow them, help them, but you realize they're just going to arise for you exactly as they're supposed to arise. So don't push them. And definitely do not overdo any exercise that I give you. Just do it exactly like I say, and you'll be as good as gold. So it took him 3 days to recover. And then after that, I said, now, about this clairaudience. No, he said, I never wanted to. He said, I don't want clairaudience. Oh, I said, there you go. I said, that's the wisdom of the master in you speaking. Because what you've realized is sometimes what we wish for is not, we don't expect how it arrives. So you want to be, really, really caring and kind about everything that you do. So I see, we have many, many light beings here. And I mean, that's one of the amazing things of you writing this. I'm so excited when I start to see this in the chat, because, you are truly that. What you've written, you're actually tapping into the very information download and codes that you've been set up with before you arrived here. You've had that into it. When I was 5, I wrote to NASA. I've still got the letter. And I said, I don't come from here. I would really love to visit Alpha Centauri and beyond on your first available space flight. And they wrote back, they were so good. They said, we don't have any flights currently heading in that direction, but you're welcome to join us when you're 18 and train as an astronaut. So it was a very, poignant letter from a young folk, because I was really into astronomy and astrology and everything, and the stars and the legends when I was very wee, just because it made complete sense to me, because I knew that I had this connection, especially with the Pleiades. So the Pleiadian connection that I have, that craft that I mentioned in the early 90s, and it's not the only craft, it just happens that was a big event that was witnessed by so many people and had so many kind of newsworthy items. Around about the same time, it was replicated by what's known as the Belgian Triangle. So if you look up that in 1991, it's actually all of that is connected in. Okay, so you have these amazing connections. we are going to amplify them, and you are going to have contact with all kinds of amazing. So it's contact 100 means the bigger contact. You know, it means you, your universal self, your God spark, the peace in you that is actually always connected to everything infinitely. You are that, and we are going to awaken, ground, stabilize. I always teach people 3 basic things: foundation, transformation, and integration. You've got to create the foundations first, which we'll do on the first day. You've got to create the ability to transform, which we'll do on the second day. And you've got to create the integration aspect. So some of these things, these techniques and practices I teach you, you'll do them for life because they'll just make so much sense. You'll go through them all and you'll think, this one speaks to me. And you'll integrate and you'll make it part of your morning and your lunchtime and your evening, or when you meet people, you'll take a conscious breath like that, in that state, as, for example, an Altair or as a Pleiades. You'll tap into that recognition and you'll know, and they'll see that light in your eyes and they'll recognize you. That's often how we meet our fellow beings, you know, in human form. So don't be under any misconceptions. Contact will also be, you might meet Zenka and you'll suddenly know that Zenka is exactly the person that you were supposed to meet, and she has the Pleiadian Lyran connection, or she has the Arcturian Orion connection. You'll suddenly know. You'll just get that. And those are the kinds of things that Zenka and I want you to note. We want you to note everything, all the wild thing. I tell you, it'll be potentially the wildest 2 weeks of your life, because you're going to be doing these practices every day. I'm going to bring your attention again and again and again and again to the fact that you are limitless celestial beings, and that there's absolutely no doubt. And you're going to, it doesn't matter where you are on the planet, you will be able to access those energies. And when we go out at night, you will see people write about the most extraordinary things that happen or that have happened leading up to them. Or you might get into the habit of going out. I mean, I go out every night and I take my daughter, and a really typical example of what happens to our family was, I was explaining to my daughter about some of this work, and she's a natural at it. So we were driving in the car one night, and she said, without looking behind her, she said, Dada, there's a golden shooting star about to come past the car. And I thought, you know, and I'm driving, she and I in the car. And then suddenly this, as if, so you can imagine we've got, so I'm out in Japan, out in the country, and there's this big country. The next moment, this golden light shoots past the car. And it was just so incredibly beautiful. You know, your eyes fill with tears when you're little ones. So involve your family if you can, involve your children. This is not you alone. You want to actually bring as much collective presence and consciousness into this family as you can. So I always involve my wife. I always involve my daughter. I inform them of everything. I ask my daughter, do you want to come and tell the story of the golden shooting star from your home planet? And she goes, no. She says, I'm not that. I don't want to, but yeah, I said, can I tell them? Yes, you can tell them that. Okay, and I related, I said exactly like this. Yeah, and I of course I saw it too, this incredible opportunity that, so all these amazing opportunities actually rest right in your awareness and consciousness. When your awareness is focused on the news and you're in fear or you're feeling unstable, or, well, of course, that's where your attention goes, right? But when your attention is on the infinite and you're literally bathing in that infinite consciousness, 24 hours for 2 weeks, 24 hours a day, watch the way your world is rocked, because your world will become the galaxy. Your world will become this infinite, and I got suddenly lights flying into my room right there. Right then, this beautiful light shone in my room. I'm so grateful, Zenka. No wonder we're going to have such a remarkable time together. So if that starts to happen to you, if you get orbs in your, or you're suddenly aware, or you wake up in the morning and things start to occur out of the blue, you'll just go, oh, what was that? It's not me. So many times people project, right? It's you. I remember that some years ago, my wife and I took a journey to the Fox Glacier of New Zealand. We're walking up there with the guide, and I've been there, you know, more than a dozen times. And I saw to the right path, and I've never seen that path before. It just actually leads straight to some bushes and a cliff. You can't go any further. It's just maybe a 20-meter path to the cliff, but I'd never seen this path before. So I said to the guy, hey, do you mind if my wife and I stop a moment? And then my wife said, okay, let's have a look. We go off. Now imagine this, point blank stop at a cliff. We push through the trees. So the guide in the group has just gone just few minutes. They've just started walking towards the glacier. And right at the point of the cliff, suddenly we push through the trees and we're in this, imagine Disneyland gone crazy 1,000 times magnified, right? That Tinkerbell has suddenly taken out her magic wand and has revealed the most incredible, they call them bales or hidden valleys in the Tibetan tradition, that we'd actually taken a subtle knife, if you're a fan of Lyra's compass, and actually carved through into another world. We were there. And my wife experienced that. It was just absolutely extraordinary. And to this day, my wife is convinced I hypnotized her or I did something, but what was even more extraordinary was that when we got there, none of it, of course, phones didn't work. We couldn't take pictures. Nothing worked. Technology shut off. We played there for the better part of 30 minutes. And my wife to this day says, when I die, I want to go there. She said, I've never experienced anything as beautiful, as radiant, as angelic or fairy-like as that. She said, it gave me, I know I'm from that place. Now, this is a big place, you know, where there should be a point-blank cliff stop. This was a big, like walking into something greater than Disneyland size, like a great, big, extraordinary, rainbow-like, angelic, fairy realm. When we came back, we stayed there about 30 minutes because both of us knew it was about that long period of time, because we played and we washed and we sang and jumped around and thought we were, you know, kids in heaven. And when we came out, the guide looked at us. I thought, oh goodness, they were fast. And he looked at us and said, oh, where did you go? He said, you and your wife disappeared for a fraction of a second. And I looked at our watch now, everything had stopped, the time had stopped. And I said, what do you mean? And he said, you're only gone for maybe a split second, but we saw you and you vanished. Just is there some kind of cave or something there? I said, no. And when we looked back, we went back to the place. I'd actually placed a rock on that path. There was no rock and there was no path. There was just the cliff with the, you know, that where you can't go any further. So my wife was convinced that in some way or another, my high gamma brain had converted her, but in fact, she experienced it as you're going to experience this, as you're going to touch. Actually, it's so beautiful as we're speaking because all your light is starting to appear in my room. So we're kind of amping up the energy already. I do want to open for questions or discussions because, I think I've talked for a millisecond and I could go on for a millennium. So Zenka, I'm going to pass back to you. I just wanted to express incredible gratitude for all the dimensions, beings, wonders, extraordinariness that's present here in you, Zenka, and in everybody that's on this call, that you are truly, truly extraordinary. So yeah, Zenka, maybe you can choose and then I can just answer as it arises.
Yeah, that sounds super great. If you're watching live, you can go to lightnet.org/hangout, and that will get you into the Zoom. And it's just miraculous, everything you said. I had this little list of questions, you answered every single one. Like I was sitting there like, wow. And I also just want to comment how amazing it was to see everyone write everything in the chat, because as you can see, we're already melding together. We're already doing this together. And that's what's so comforting about it and easy about it, is that you're going to help us do this together. And it makes it so much more fun and it makes it so much more powerful. I mean, so yeah, it's really exciting. I am going to call on people again, for the people that are watching the archives of this or watching this. We get a lot of questions about how, what's going on with the registration and all that stuff. So you're going to go to lightnet.org/contact 100, and that's going to get you on a pre-registration list, because the registration opens on Saturday at 11:11. So February 11th, 11:11, that's when you can start registering. Then we'll go open to the public on Valentine's Day on the 14th. So try to get in that pre-registration. That will do that. It's $375, and like Altair said, you can have your family with you on the Zoom. We'll just do one birth chart per register, but you can have your son next to you. You can have your husband next to you. We want you to incorporate this knowing, and he, like as he mentions, he wants you guys to teach other people, because that's how we do this. Just being in your presence tonight, Altair, is mind opening. It's freeing. Like you said, you wanted all beings to be free. Well, this is it. And we do it together. So I've got a couple questions that I'm going to line up here. We've got tomorrow. So if you're in here and you want to put your reactions up for a question, I will pull you down. So there we go. Thank you, Tamara. You can go ahead and unmute now. And Kazi, you'll be next.
Hi, thank you, Zenka. And thank you so much for this opportunity tonight. I really loved your talk, Altair. You mentioned earlier that there was no tools yet, or beginning of tools that can measure these kinds of things, because we're a science-based world here in this country, in America. And what I'm curious about is that I was tested with my brain waves and found to have a lot of theta. And the tester said, do you have a hard time telling the difference between dreams and reality? And I said, yeah, that's suspiciously personal, but yes. And I found that very intriguing. Yeah. And so there's one way of measuring their theta brainwaves, or beta, or whatever. But are there other tools that you've heard about recently that can measure these experiences that we have? Combining the science and spirit, just
beautiful. Yeah. So when I said so two things here. One is I'm fortunate because I'm in a lot of those what you'd call currently advanced technologies on all kinds of levels. I'm also speaking to the fact that subtle energies, for example, if you were asked somebody, how do you measure the Kundalini force? There is the measuring instruments to do that are being investigated at the moment. So especially in Japan, there are a variety of institutes, both in Japan and California, that are looking into that. But as yet, to get it into the scientific community and have it peer reviewed and look at all that kind of level of research, it's maybe somewhat away from that measurement. Equally, to measure what I'll call non-conceptual or non-dual states of awareness is at the very early days. The work of Daniel P. Brown and Brown University, for example, has looked into measuring what might be called the universal states of consciousness, or the oceans of awareness. And they've equally found gamma states. But for example, when they measured gamma on my brain, it goes up beyond 200 hertz frequency. And it's very difficult to measure what happens in very high gamma states or in very low delta states. So for example, when they've measured my brain, it's either very, very high gamma, so it's in those very high frequency states, or incredibly low, to the point, like, as one scientist said, technically I should be dead because there's no reading. So it dropped. So in the Dentsu lab experiments, I showed them how so they often do, it's often like on call. Okay, can you do a 60-second experiment where you tap into high-level gamma? So you do that. And then, okay, can you now drop the other way into sub-delta? And I do that. And then they'd say, what are you doing? Our instruments aren't measuring anything. And I'd say, well, that's because I'm simply using a practice that I used to do in Tibet when I was traveling. And that was simply to open up to the vast sky and then drop into that awareness of boundlessness. And their instruments go way up and then go way down and cut out. So it was I remember Satguru saying, that his scientists measured it. It sounded like he was dead at the point that they couldn't get any frequency response. So that's where I'm saying brainwaves are a certain way of measuring it in a very valid way. And I'm part of those testing companies in lots of different parts. I think I've been used by nearly all the major headset companies to test out their devices because my brain actually burns them. I think Muse, which I love dearly, I think I've blown out 5 of their headsets already and they won't give me anymore. No, Muse is a wonderful company. So I'm just having a little joke with them because you know, they say, can you not send back anymore? What are you doing to them? And I said, well, I put them on and they burn out the sensors. So yeah, there's some wonderful headset companies and I'm in touch with you know, a lot of them. Focus Calm is another one. So I helped them with their experiences with Olympic swimming team and the weightlifting team and the women's soccer team. And so I remember the president of the company had to go and give a demonstration to the Olympic team about how adept he was at being able to, you know, use states and move into states. So I'd done some meditation guidances for that company, and he said, can you show me how? And he said, I want to look good. And so, you know, I showed him how to drop in and out of states with a little bit more dexterity because he was a neuroscientist. So yeah, what you're speaking to, Kazia, is that, you know, you have a very high theta brain, and that means you are really in that, let's call it that boundarylessness of a high theta experience, which is often very visionary. So if you've got high theta spikes, which is also what my brain shows when it's on that a DMT experience, is that I'll see if I can, sometimes it's actually quite useful for people to see the kind of thing. Because when you talk about, and this is possibly what your brain is actually showing, and that is that you already have this kind of high theta state quite naturally. So I'll show you what I mean. If you just give me a second while I try. Yeah, here we go. So a really typical thing that happens for people who have visionary experiences like you do is this. Just a moment.
Is lucid dreaming in delta or theta, or do you know?
Yeah. Yep. So lucid dreaming often has a composite of theta, gamma, and delta. So delta is deep sleep, and quite often I was researched doing lucid dreaming, and my brain at the time I was lucid dreaming went really high into a gamma state. So what they and this is just for my brain, but so you'll find that differences between people will be quite so. Deep sleep, delta. If you're in that hypnagogic state, which I think is what Kazi is also speaking about, where she's quite visionary, and so the boundary between dream and reality is quite blurry, that's a high theta state. And then if you very, very lucid, a little bit like clear light, where you're suddenly everything's so clear, you'll find that'll often manifest as high gamma. So this is what, for example, this is an energy that most of us have, which is a typical baseline for the average person. So you can, Zenka, can you confirm you can see this graph?
Yeah, it's working.
Okay. So the baseline for most of us is kind of a calm state at around 10 to 11 hertz. And on the right here, you can see there is somebody who's just taken DMT, and they get this very high theta spike of about 7.5, 7.8 hertz, which is actually the visionary state, which curiously is also the Schumann resonance theta measure of about 7 hertz theta and 14 alpha. And this is my brain on the left, which is, the scientist said to me, oh, this is a person on DMT with a spike of 7.8 hertz. And this is you all the time with a spike of 7.8 hertz. So I get a lot of people come to visit me who want to have a lucid dream experience or want to have a plant medicine experience without the plant medicine. In fact, I've had people that I don't know who go on plant medicine journeys, and in the middle of the plant medicine journey, a deity or a celestial being will arise and say, so Krishna will arise and say, speak to Altair. and then they'll come out of the plant medicine journey and go, who was that? And they'll describe to their guide, oh, Krishna came and told me to contact somebody called Altair. Do you know who it's? Now, if you type in Altair and Krishna, you'll get me on Google, because I published loads and loads of articles about all of those kind of deity connections years ago. So that was really useful for people in plant medicine to be able to find me. And then I'd guide them into how to actually access that, that brainwave state without necessarily being on the plant medicine, so that they could actually speak to Krishna without the plant medicine. So quite useful. So I want to make sure that I've kind of endeavored clumsily, Kazia, to answer some of what you were asking about.
Very good.
Yeah, and I'll just say, Kazi, we'd love to do experiments with you, because we've got some brain sensing headsets. We've been doing it while spoon bending. Muse is good. We have a brain link. So let's, connect with us at team@lightnut.org. We'd love to do some experiments, because this is so interesting. It's like interesting, and so okay, so we have
I like that. Kazi, you've been, you're gonna have to wear a badge. I've been noted. I'm gonna be experimented on. They're gonna there'll be Zinker send some scientists around. I love that. You should get
and that's the thing, you guys. I mean, it didn't used to be that you could buy all this stuff for under a certain, couple $100 or whatever it is. Like all the equipment we're using with the radios and everything, it's like, this is citizen science. So we get to get together and compare notes and learn about this, right? So this is great. So we just have 10 minutes, you guys, left in the broadcast, but we've got a question from Tamara. Sorry about that before.
That's okay. I just want to share really quickly that this morning, I actually did a light language for the first time, and it was on blessings from the stars.